Hey there, and happy Friday. From the KUOW newsroom, this is Seattle Now. I'm Ruby DeLuna with a roundup of today's top stories. It's Friday, February 20th. Starting with big international news, the U.S. Supreme Court today struck down some of the Trump administration's sweeping tariffs, and that's been greeted with bipartisan support in Washington state. Republican Congressman Dan Newhouse represents Central Washington. He says the decision restores balance between the legislative and executive branches. State Republican Party Chair Jim Walsh says the court's decision is a, quote, rational ruling that Trump should apply tariffs more selectively.
I think in the long run, what we want to see is we want a trade policy in which the United States is not the sucker anymore, in which the United States acts appropriately when trading partners tariff and tax us.
Democrats were more emphatic in their criticism of Trump's tariff policies. The Seattle Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce thanked Democratic Governor Bob Ferguson for opposing the tariffs in a filing to the U.S. Supreme Court. Tukwila is the latest Washington city to consider a ban on allowing federal immigration agencies to set up new detention facilities. Gustavo Sagrero has more.
Tukwila City Councilmember Joe Camacho says many cities like his are worried about drawing too much attention to themselves.
I think the attention is already here. So we need to put things in place to not allow that presence to get larger.
Tukwila is prime real estate for setting up a deportation hub. There's already an ICE office there and a potential expansion on the way. And at the northern edge of the city is Boeing Field, where there's many privately chartered deportation flights. The Tukwila City Council would still need to approve a freeze on any permits issued for detention facilities for the next 6 months. They'll meet next week. Gustavo Sagrero, KUOW News.
A new report shows more than half of those arrested on federal immigration charges in Washington state last year had no criminal history. The Seattle Times cites data from UC Berkeley that shows Washington has one of the highest rates when it comes to people getting arrested despite not having a criminal conviction. The Deportation Data Project found nearly 2,000 people have been arrested here between last January and October. Of those, 88 were children. State lawmakers are weighing whether to cut millions of dollars for groups that help survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. Victim advocates say this could result in aid organizations closing down. KNKX reporter Mitch Borden has more.
In Tacoma, the nonprofit Our Sister's House helps Black individuals dealing with domestic violence. Its executive director, Kelly Robinson, says about half of their funding comes from the state to help provide things like temporary shelter and danger assessments.
The proposed budget cuts that are on the table will pretty much devastate our program.
This legislative session, Governor Bob Ferguson's proposed budget would decrease funding for crime victim services by about $8 million compared to last year. Victim advocates across Washington say that state lawmakers need to allocate about $21 million to sustain crime victim services through next year. I'm Mitch Borden, reporting.
A new officer has taken the job of serving as a liaison between the LGBTQ community and Seattle Police. SPD has tapped Hayden Barton, an officer who identifies as queer and has been with the department since 2019. The Capitol Hill blog reports he's been meeting with queer community groups. His appointment comes as the department works to regain trust with Capitol Hill and LGBTQ residents. Last year, Chief Sean Barnes had appointed an East Precinct captain with a history of disciplinary action, then quickly removed him after community outcry. Seattle-based Amazon reached new heights this week. It has surpassed Walmart to become the biggest company in the world by sales. It's a first for Amazon. Amazon's total revenue last year was nearly $717 billion. Walmart reported sales of just over $713 billion. The Seattle Mariners took the field this afternoon for their first spring training game of the season. They beat the San Diego Padres 7-4 down in Peoria, Arizona. And it's not just baseball that's starting up. Soccer is too. The Sounders' regular season opening match is this Sunday against Colorado at Lumen Field. It gets underway at 6:15. If you're being detained at the Northwest Ice Processing Center in Tacoma and you need urgent medical attention, you'll likely be taken to St. Joseph Medical Center. Nurses there say detainees always have 2 ICE agents guarding them, and often they ignore safety and privacy practices. KUOW's Eilish O'Neill has been reporting on this story, and she spoke with Kim Malcolm.
So what are the nurses' main concerns for the patients?
They have a number of concerns. They're worried about medical neglect, that the patients are being taken to the hospital too late when their medical conditions have already escalated and become more serious than they needed to be. They're worried about the detainees' privacy. They say that ICE agents have been refusing to leave the room when doctors and nurses need to interview the detainees about their private health history or their health conditions. And they say ICE agents are also not leaving the room during things like catheter changes or if they need to change a patient who has soiled themselves. They're also worried about ICE agents' use of restraints or shackles. The agents have been shackling the patients to the beds by either 3 or 4 points, so either both ankles and one wrist or both ankles and both wrists. And that is a hindrance to eating safely, to healing, because you need to be able to sit up, walk around, take a shower. And in one case, a patient was shackled so tightly that they suffered bruising and nerve damage on their right hand.
And can you explain why they're concerned about having ICE agents themselves in the hospital?
Well, they're worried about a couple of things. One is just a general environment of fear. They're worried that people will avoid the hospital if they know that there's a presence of ICE there, that they will delay care. Not ICE detainees, that people in the general community will avoid the hospital. They're worried about staff members who could be immigrants and would be worried about coming to work. And they're also worried about infection control because in a couple of instances, agents refused to wear either a mask they were supposed to wear or a gown they were supposed to wear when they entered a patient room.
Eilish, have the nurses raised these concerns with the administrators at the hospital?
They have. I've actually seen 7 workplace complaints that were filed with both the hospital administration and the union as well. What the nurses say they want is clear policies and procedures. When there's a conflict with an ICE agent, the agent isn't leaving the room when asked or isn't wearing a mask when asked. What are they supposed to do? And some are calling for ICE agents to stay out of the hospital entirely. This is Jared Richardson. He's a nurse and a union organizer for the Washington State Nurses Association.
What I think most nurses want to see is we want to see ICE out of our hospitals. We don't think it's a proper place for them to be. We think it is harmful to the healing environment. We think it's harmful to the community. We think it's harmful to preventative care. We don't think the presence of ICE is appropriate.
So that's what the nurses union is saying. What about the administrators at Virginia Mason? How are they responding to these issues?
I sent them a long list of questions. They didn't respond to the specific allegations or the specific concerns that the nurses raised, but they did send me a statement. It says, quote, "Questions sometimes arise when patients are in the custody of law enforcement or are otherwise detained. Our focus in every situation is the same, ensuring patients receive appropriate medical care in a safe and respectful environment." End quote.
And has ICE responded at all to these complaints?
ICE did not respond to KUOW's request for comment.
Eilish, what are nurses planning on doing next?
The Washington State Nurses Association joined with a couple of immigrant rights organizations, and they're holding a protest on Friday, mostly dealing with inadequate medical care for detainees and how sick the detainees are by the time they're brought to the hospital. Politicians are trying to raise this. Senator Murray wrote to ICE asking for better medical care for detainees about 3 months ago and has not heard back yet. So it's unclear what will happen next or if ICE is going to be responsive to these concerns.
KUOW's Eilish O'Neill talking with Kim Malcolm. You can find Eilish's in-depth reporting on this at KUOW.org. Next week on Seattle Now, we're talking about blackpast.org, considered the largest online collection of global Black history. We'll talk with their new executive director about why the website remains so vital.
There are two trains of thought. Some people believe we'll get to a point where Black History Month is not needed, websites like blackpast.org is no longer needed, ethnic studies is no longer needed. I don't agree with that sentiment.
Hear more Monday morning. And that's all for today from the KUOW Newsroom in Seattle. Our producer is Andy Hurst. The interview in today's episode was produced by John O'Brien. I'm Ruby DeLuna. Seattle Now and KUOW are members of the NPR network. Have a great weekend.